Hey everybody, it's been a long time since we've done one, but it's time for another top 5 worst 5, this time, keywords. Hi everybody, this is the Captain Jose and the Doombringer Griffin.
Hello.
Back in the day, before the days of Team Absolution, my biggest fear was a local tournament, and particularly Ryan beating me at that tournament.
Those were the days.
He was the best Vanguard player around, and he beat us all into smithereens until his shopkeep told him to stop playing.
I was Monster.
But the thing is, locals was really the furthest to go, so as far as I was concerned, Ryan was the best player in the world, though I knew he wasn't.
Unfortunately.
Lucky for us, though, shortly after that, a nice brave company came up and decided to make their own circuit series, and that was Altered Reality Games. And it wasn't until that point that the Team Absolution really had its chance to form and to grow into its own team. It really gave us an avenue to express our joy for the game and enjoy it in a very competitive aspect. It was really the only competitive avenue for a while.
Because Bushiroad's not coming to Charlotte NC, I'll tell you that.
We want to give some time to say, if you haven't gone to an Altered Reality Games Circuit Series tournament, you really should attend. They are fun. They're best 2 out of 3, Swiss format. What are the details you got for us, Ryan?
Prize support? How's that for an incentive? Vendors all around, win ARG points and take them to other things or buy things on the site. So the way it's organized is magnificent, and it has something for everyone. So even if your friends don't play the same game as you, at least you can all go together and have a good time.
It really holds a very special place in us, the chance that we get to travel as much as we do to these events, because without these events, we really wouldn't have started traveling. We wouldn't have gotten to meet the fans. So from the bottom of our heart, we want to take the time to thank you guys and hopefully get ARG some support that they need as well.
The more we can do, the more they can do for us.
Hey everybody, this is Team Absolution bringing you the news, spoilers, everything you like. I'm joined with the Doombringer Griffin himself, rocking that Drop a Draco
Drop a
t-shirt.
Draco.
So,
check my boy Pokey.
It has been a very long time since we have talked about anything top 5 or worst 5 related.
What has there been?
We have got keywords. So now we get to go through top 5 worst 5, but you're probably wondering, but Jose, we don't, does the clan still missing a keyword? No, they're not. Ryan, fill us in on Link Joker and their absence of a keyword.
So Bushi's official stance on Link Joker's keyword is that lock, delete, and vanish delete do not count as Link Joker's keyword, but also they don't need a new one. They've said that Link Joker's not getting one. All the keywords that are going to come out are out, at least in this round of keywords. So Link Joker, while you kind of have 3 pseudo keywords, you just don't get anything else. You get the axe. Goodbye. Thanks for making us wait for that, Bushi.
They're also not included. That's why vanish, lock as a mechanic itself, and vanish delete are not included in
this list.
So, do you want to do top 5 worst or worst 5 worst, Ryan?
Let's go with top 5 first. Let's start with the good news and the obvious.
In typical fashion, before we get started as well, let's do this. One, this list is in no particular order because we do know that there's sometimes going to be a fine line between which is better than the other. However, we do have one that we do think is the best. We'll talk about that after we go through all 5. So the way we had a hard time deciphering how we wanted this, but one, it's power of keyword itself, power of the cards that are within the keyword,
or how it's used with those cards.
And also just the accessibility and ease of using the keyword itself.
If you can turn it on really easily, it helps a lot, doesn't it?
So, and with that, let's go into our top 5. Number 1, and the one I think is the best, and I think the one you can agree is the best.
Who's gonna come in here and say, oh yeah, that was better? I'm sorry, no. Have you seen the Continental results? No. Try again. Go look at the keywords again. Tell me which one is the best. Go for it.
Time Leap. Gear Chronicle's very own keyword. Time Leap is probably our number 1 choice.
It's so busted. It's more attacks thing. There's nothing else attached to it. It's literally just get yourself another dude, do on-call skills, combo again.
It comes in a stud.
You can have it in attacks or more, depending
or more. I mean, the mechanic was so good that it really helped in creating a Cradle Elemental to stop it. It's a great mechanic. It's weird. The only harp I have against it is in lore it makes sense, but it didn't make sense in the deck the way it was ran before. It was like a completely new mechanic they threw in there. This is keyword though.
They started out with like tucking and I don't even know what lore-wise that was supposed to be like. But at least that was kind of something like, okay, so your opponent now can't get advantages based on having stuff in the graveyard, so that kind of works sometimes. Also, you can just, you don't have to deal with any of that stuff or having that around anymore. And then you just decided that Time Leap combo was the new way to go, and you really pushed that on us, didn't you? The oppressor descends from the sky.
So Time Leap takes the top one. Number 2, and not very close behind it, in my opinion. I think they are very close. And the rest of these, like I said, all these 5 don't like get into a super hyper comment right about this.
And also, remember, this is not in a vacuum. This actually, unlike most of our top 5 worst 5s, this takes into the deck and the cards that it works with.
Yeah. Number 2's got to go to Rescue. I love Rescue as a mechanic. It's a further extension of what Angels already did, and it's extra checks.
It's extra checks on a with Gavrail on swing. That's still 5 checks. It doesn't matter that 2 of them came after. I mean, unless you're trying to put Vanguard through, which you're usually just not going to do anyway. And the fact that Angels use the damage as a second hand, and now you can just filter more options while gaining extra power, I mean, that seems pretty ridiculous to me, and it's not limited to just giant Vanguard skills either. Rearguards have the skill too.
Also, the G Guardian with Rescue is really good.
Oh yeah, I can just look for more guard, essentially, while I'm doing it.
Does Refros have? No, Refros doesn't have Rescue.
No, but
the other one does.
But assuming you hit Refros, it's a trigger, and then you can pull it out of the damage.
No, but doesn't the stand trigger? That stand trigger is also used as well.
It is.
It's a very good stand trigger. So yeah, I mean, and Rescue really bumped Angels to like the next stage,
or at least the cards that came with them did. But yeah. I mean, it was just extra power on top of what they already wanted to do, and that's kind of the trend you'll see in these top 5. It's things the clans wanted to do anyway, and then Bushiroad stacked some extra power on them and said, "Here, you're rewarded for what your clan is doing." And they're like, "Well, good. I already had these old cards that did exactly what I wanted them to do," and they meshed really well with this mechanic, like the Grade 1 and Grade 2 no seals. And now suddenly it's really good. There you go.
Number 3, and this one's probably the one that you probably guys are going to get a little frustrated about just because we don't know fully everything about this. But from the minute I heard it, I said, this is just stupid as a keyword. Even in a vacuum, even without a vacuum, no matter what skills you add to it, you're just like, this is just too good. Ritual. I think Ritual is probably the most powerful keyword, one of the most powerful keywords in the game. Time Leap beats it just because I've seen Time Leap. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen everything Ritual can do yet here. So
the thing about Ritual is the possibilities are really limitless because it's so easy to turn on. Ritual can just be active most, if not all of the time, considering you're being rewarded for what Shadows does, which is kill things off, usually in the back row or wherever. You're going to end up with Grade 1s in there, and now you have options to put Ritual on everything and give it any kind of effect, because it doesn't really matter. Shadows can kind of do everything they want, except, doing weird stuff like Lock. They can't do that, obviously. But you can put a lot of different effects on Shadows, and it makes sense. Hey, you can even give them restanders, and we probably would look the other way. But also the fact that now the Grade 1s you're retiring that, give extra bonuses can also do more things because they're kind of doing Ritual. And the way they're designing the cards, like, when you retire this, it also counts for Ritual, so you can use this card's Ritual effect too. That's a totally new design direction that we haven't seen before, and they're already incorporating new design quirks like that.
Yeah.
So what that rant means is Ritual could really do anything, and we do. Do you really want to sit around and speculate like, it won't be that great? No, we're not going to do that. It's going to be good.
It's going to be good, and compared to all the other ones we've seen, I think Ritual shows the most promise. And
that's what
I got a lot more excited for the first time I heard about Ritual than the first time I heard about the first ever keyword, which is Harmony. And that's just me. Next is Hollow. Now, some people think Hollow's bad. In a vacuum, it could be, but you have to just consider also where it's in. It's in Granblue, and it's not just that they res things, but it's also that like a lot of their cards already died at the end of the turn that they came back in. So
the fact that they're stacking extra power on what they already wanted to do works with the deck.
Like Hollow gave. Is it like, okay, there's a few instances where things can come back and not do anything, but we're letting you sacrifice that for more power. I'm like, well, most of the time we had to do that anyways. This sounds good to me. So I liked that a lot.
But also Granblue has really managed to capitalize on the fact that now they are able to res their things, get extra power, and then sock those things away again for later so the opponent can't touch them, mess with them, lock them since Link Joker is so prevalent. It really worked out as a mechanic with how well it meshed with the deck itself and then how it propelled the deck forward into the meta. And so while I won't discuss, meta, well, I guess we're kind of already looking at that with, Time Leap and Angels and how well they worked together, but this is more how it answered other decks, like Link Joker or Kagero, just by socking all its resources away and being able to call them out with new added power, such as Night Rose or the Night Mist Break right into Plagueton combo, which into Stride now allows you to build a superpowered board for fairly little cost on a holo.
Right. No, definitely agree. And then last, and this was probably the hardest one for me to pick, I said Wave. Like I said, these are in no particular order, but I think Wave is a great keyword. One, because it gives you skills, and once again, it is literally for doing what Aquaforce already wants to do. And more importantly, and I mentioned this because me and Ryan talked about it a lot, and he was like, is it really that good though? I was like, but here's the thing, is like, you could throw one wave card into any non-wave deck and still probably get the added bonus. Whereas like, well, I don't want to talk about it, but Brave's probably in the worst list. Spoiler alert. Brave's probably going to be in the worst list. Why? Because, yes, you can throw a Brave card in a non-Brave deck, but you're rarely ever going to get that Brave skill off. Whereas here, you can put a non-Wave, or you can put a Wave card in a non-Wave-ish deck and benefit from it. A card that says Wave 3 do something is just purely benefited by the fact that you have Tidal Assault in the deck, or Magnum Assault. Or something that like helps it turn it live.
Right.
It's only benefited by having the skill, and it's never detrimented by it.
But another thing is it allows you, and while it's a little complicated to get some of them off, it allows you to put extra power and add a condition that Aquaforce doesn't really mind. Like, you have to kind of plan out your turn more. How Tetraboil says has 2 different effects on Wave 2 and Wave 4. So you're kind of putting power on different parts of the turn now and making the Aquaforce player think about how the turn's going to go. But because you make it that much more complicated or add those conditions that granted Aquaforce doesn't really have a problem with most of the time, you're able to add little bits of extra power around. Now you can have those weird, turn, like, okay, Wave 4 exactly, this restands, and then you keep going and more stuff happens, this, that, and the other thing. And while you might limit it a little bit, no turn is ever perfect with Aquaforce, I guess.
Right.
But it really allows you to do some cool stuff.
Correct.
And it, like Jose said, it just came right in and meshed with everything else that Aquaforce was already doing.
It was a seamless transition from wave to non-wave, whereas like other keywords cannot stake that claim. You're not throwing Engorge cards into an ancient dragon deck, whereas like you could totally throw some wave cards into any of their archetype decks, like Blue Wave, which ended up being a big wave thing, but also Thavas or whatever. Honorable mention goes to Shadowstitch. Ryan, throw us down your Shadowstitch honorable mention.
It's just so cool. Like the stuff you can do with it and how it punishes your opponent for playing the game correctly. It's a really neat mechanic. We didn't see it top very much, and it's not like it was wasted on Murakumo, because flavor-wise it kind of went with that, and how you were able to call out copies of stuff and move stuff around and get extra attacks in. I think there was one combo you could get, I don't know, what was it, like 3 Vanguard restands and 6 or 7 attacks. And it was some absolute ridiculous, like, perfect combo you could do. But that really showcased what the mechanic could actually do when abused. I just wish it had gotten more time in the limelight to really show that off, but it really didn't. But the fact that it was really cool design-wise, I'll give it that.
So, now we're going to the worst 5. And we're going to start off with the one I think is the worst, which isn't Brave, actually. Thunderstrike.
It's not easy at all to use. It's so hard.
They had to make cards to turn this on
that don't work with the rest of the deck. You have your enablers, so the cards that on hit or on call or something, you retire a couple of things, and then you have your Stride Bearer, which is bearing the load for this mechanic, and then you have all of these really cool Thunderstrike cards that just don't turn on immediately, even though most of them are still GB 1 or 2. And that's a little upsetting, I feel, especially because when we saw the Fighters Collection G-Guard was Thunderstrike. It's just Thunderstrike 1, but you can't use it at first. It's just a vanilla 15k G-Guard. You're better off not running it for a while. And the next G-Guard wasn't any better. It was more Thunderstrike.
It doesn't mesh well. It's like mixing water and oil. It doesn't mesh well with the deck, the clan it belongs in. It doesn't really benefit that much from it, and you need so much enablers in order to really start to see any benefit from it that it starts to question the purpose of it at all.
Or at least to see the benefit early. Now, granted, a couple turns of Vanquisher, an enabler or two, and then a stride, and you're looking pretty cool. But that's a lot of setup to make your mechanic work. Now, granted, your opponent usually can't get those things back, and sometimes your opponent helps you out with the load, aka you're playing against Gear Chronicle. That usually works. But that's just one matchup, and I don't feel like the deck's going to get propelled very much forward just based on that. And while I don't know if not meshing well with other archetypes in the same clan merits a worse 5 performance, but this one is pretty bad because without those enablers, you can't do any kind of Thunderstrike cards. You can't use your G-Guards properly in an Eradicator deck or a Brawler deck. You just can't. It doesn't work. You won't have the things to use with them. I'm not teching in cards just to use my G-Guards. I'm using better G-Guards. I'll run Force Greaves if I have to. And Dismal, because why not?
Link Joker back in the day before, even still for Chaos, because we didn't have a good G-Guard. We used to screw it 1, 2, screw you. We don't care.
We don't get good G-Guards, it's fine. It's fine, I got it.
It's fine. Not even, it's fine.
But Thunderstrike is it's like water and oil. You can't mix it, and it's clunky. It's so very clunky, except when Vanquisher is doing his thing. And eventually, will you get there? Yeah. But does it feel good? No. It feels very arduous to turn this on.
So, next one is a little bit like mixing oil and water, but less so. Brave. Brave. Oh, Brave.
Moment of silence for Jose.
First, is it getting better? Sure, I can agree with that. But here's why it's getting better. They stopped so much about the 3 or less get this skill stuff, and a lot of the newer Brave cards are search cards with Brave, search cards with Brave,
maybe search
cards with Brave. Like, now Brave has become more a searchability requirement and less of like, oh, if you're 3 cards or less, get this. Now, granted, a lot of the cards do have if you have 3 cards, get less, but you're starting to care less and less about that and more about like, oh, this search Brave stuff, and if you're in Brave, then this. Here's the problem with Brave. Brave requires you to have it requires you to lose the game. It requires you to have 3 or less cards in hand. You can be like, oh, but at the end of the turn, we have enablers. Yeah, but that does not make your keyword good. If you have an enabler, that makes your keyword bad. Think about this.
Let me bring 5 enablers.
Let's talk about the top 5 again real quick. Time Leap, does it require an enabler? Absolutely not. Rescue, no. Ritual, absolutely not. The enabler is the mechanic. Hollow, nope. Wave, absolutely. You need dudes. That's it. That's your enabler.
You need enablers for Aqua Force, but there's still attacks. You can still make it work.
You're benefiting while you're enabling, but like the Brave one, like, oh, I retire this dude. I get to put stuff in the drop zone and then draw a card at the end of it. Whoop-de-doo. Like, and you have another enabler which isn't as bad as the Stride one that sends back. But then you start to say like, yes, to make my keyword work, I need not 1 but 2 enablers. And one of them needs to be a Stride. Like, it's not good. It's just like,
so bad.
And you may wonder, like, well, why is having 3 cards? Like, because you lose games at 3 or less cards.
You can't guard with that anymore.
You can't guard with that ish. Get it out of here.
Maybe back in the days of Trial Deck Set 6, where your opponent had 2 columns and you had a perfect guard, a crappy card in 10k, you were solid. If Brave was out then, who knows what's gonna happen? But in today's meta, and you don't have 10 cards in hand by Stride 2, what are you doing? Stop it.
Like, you just can't. It's not as bad as Thunderstrike, where like it doesn't even belong in the clan. Like they've tweaked it and mixed it around to make it kind of mix with the clan, and it has been getting a little bit better. Partially because of the enablers, but that doesn't justify the keyword being good. That means they're making good cards
with bad
keywords. Very, very different. So, and that's all I'm going to say about Brave. So next is Engorge. Now, I kind of disagree with Ryan a little bit on this, but I do think that we needed to put something on the list.
So I wanted to juxtapose Engorge with something like Ritual, where I said Ritual has almost limitless options with what the mechanic can do, because any of the cards in the deck can have Ritual, and any of those cards can do whatever they want. And all the design stuff looks really cool with how they use Ritual to move across card design. Like I said, when you retire this thing, but it still counts for Ritual, and it has a Ritual effect, you can do both things when you retire it. For the effect of something else, to do something else cool. Shadows is really cool about that. Tachikaze as well, it's very flavorful, and granted I like the keyword for that. And while I would... The problem with this keyword is it does limit your options. You have to eat your other things, and you can pay cost to get things back, or those things can do other things too. But the fact that really only your Vanguard or your powerful attacking rearguards can use the Engorge mechanic to gain power, or guard restrict, or retire your opponent's dudes, or anything like that, I feel like you kind of run out of design space after those three things. You don't really get to do a whole lot else. And so, while a lot of keywords are boring or mid-tier, I feel like Engorge kind of flirting with the worst 5 here, or at least kind of sitting in the same little party, just because there's only so much you can do with it, and I would really like to see Bushi pull out something else and prove me wrong here. So this is more of I'm just saying that there aren't enough options to really make this keyword shine with the way that I see Bushi's design space so far. They surprised me in set 10, perfect.
I mean, it kind of just goes back to the problem that I've always had with Tachikaze from the beginning, is they're kind of are just a Shadow Paladin light. Mm-hmm. Prehistoric Shadow Paladins.
Eat stuff, get huge, try to kill your opponent. Do you ever get to? Apparently, maybe sometimes. I saw you got a top in there recently. Good job.
I mean, I played against it. It's not terrible anymore, especially now that like GB is not as limited as it used to be. But like back in the day when Shadows ran the table and like Engorge had just released, and Braxton had to play against people who were playing Tachis, and they would eat their own dudes, and Braxton would survive, and he'd be like, "Okay, unblockable Diablo, good game. We had a good time." Yeah,
that's kind of like I said. I didn't really want to try and bring the meta against the worst 5 because that's not really their fault. I mean, we're talking about the keywords themselves than the meta. But yeah, the fact that you kind of just retired all your dudes for them, and then you had your opponent has an instant win button, that didn't really help your case at all.
Next, I want you to talk about this one because you've kind of had more experience with the deck at Afterimage.
So Afterimage, I have a lot of problems with Nubatama. Like Jose said, I played the deck a little bit. I played against the deck a little bit. It could have just been so much better if it just focused on discard and not pseudo-retire and then jump back. So, Afterimage, if you don't know what it does, it says if you have 6 or less cards in hand, you can bounce this card back to hand at the end of the turn, assuming your opponent put one of their bound cards back into their hand. So, you're doing your pseudo-retire, bind stuff, maybe get rid of it, maybe your opponent takes it back, you're using Sakumurakan or one of the other strides, and your opponent's picking up their stuff, and you can pick up your cards. So this works really, really well with just a few cards. So you can pick up your PG, so that's cool. You can pick up your starter, which is actually really good, and with a couple of those, that's about the best use you're going to get out of this mechanic, is the fact that you can pseudo-retire for a decently low cost. I don't know, Kagura's still kind of cheaper, honestly. But that's the Retire clan itself, right? So you kind of get your pseudo retire and you bind things, or take cards out of their hand. You play your starters and you move those things to the drop zone, and then you pick them up at the end of the turn if you have 6 or less cards. But the fact that it's less, or less cards, and you only have a few cards that really use it, and it's limited by how many cards you have in your hand, which if you're striding and you get 3, you're in a bad spot. And granted, it works really well with the fact that Nubatama can't draw any cards, and you're usually going to be able to meet it. But that's not good. You're kind of boxed in on this mechanic with the 6 or less cards and the fact that your clan just doesn't draw anything. And you're a mechanic in a cage. There's only so many places you can go. And you just got the 2 little starter ninja monkeys, flying around going, yeah! Poke, 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 poke. And that's what Afterimage does. It's just not great.
Yeah, I'm gonna put Afterimage.
The only problem was other things were better. That's your problem, Afterimage.
The last one, and I actually think that this one is closer to being meh than it is worst 5. Once again, we actually had a hard time differentiating the worst than it was. The best clearly shown, but we had to actually dig and think about them to think which one were the 5 worst. Because out of the top 5, they kind of all get kind of meh. But I think Burst. I think Burst is one of the worst 5, just because. And I love Cosmic. You can ask Ryan. I love that deck. But Burst really is what hinders it, in my opinion. I think. Granted, I think that Burst is literally just the Grand Gallop mechanic. It is like their the Cosmic Hero sub-clan, that's their shtick. And to a certain degree, it's easy because, they can kind of like, one, the on-stride skill for Grand Gallop where he gets power anyways really helps in activating the burst mechanics, but none of their skills are so, oh my gosh, wowsies, that like, except for the stride, which has then been eclipsed.
But the stride does the
same thing. But it isn't about that. Like, even then, like, the skills were good, but they weren't like, oh my gosh, except for the stride, none of these skills were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, except for maybe Grand Volver, but even his skill was like, required you to hit, even though you needed kind of burst to do things. It was very meh to me. It was all very meh. And that's why, generally, I put it on the top. And it's not it's not very splashable, in my opinion. I don't think you can really put it into a lot of other decks. Even though they can all increase in power, their skills never justified them taking precedence over other cards that were already in, for example, D-Robos, or in, heaven forbid, Metalborgs, which is, wow, it's been a long time since I said that. Any of those two. So that's our worst 5. And honorable mention, just because I feel like we have to give a little love to that Forbidden Clan that no one loves anymore, Touken Ranbu! Just okay enough to stay away from the list. Shinken Hissatsu, just because, dude, it's Limit Break 3.
Honestly, I wish they didn't have that, because there's no point. Let me have my early game.
It's Shinken Hissatsu, man. It's that Limit Break 3 life. It's fine. It's okay. It's Limit Break 3. The best thing about that keyword is its name, because I just love saying Shinken Hissatsu.
Even though you butcher it most of the time.
I don't care.
He's had enough practice on this one.
So that's our top 5 and worst 5 in terms of keyword list. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think we were wrong in the top 5? Do you think Brave is actually the greatest keyword of all? Let us know here in the comments.
But you're welcome to comment.
We'll make sure to answer if we can. We'll see you here next time with Team Absolution. This is Ryan and I signing off. Peace.
Toodaloo.